Welcome everyone to the Moisky News for June the 15th, 2020. Today I thought we'd talk about the statue of Winston Churchill, which means continuing what I discussed with Trups LP on the political recap stream from last Friday. Because more has come out, more has transpired, and quite frankly it's all quite entertaining. We can start with Winston Churchill's grandchildren, Emma Soames and Nicholas Soames. Emma Soames believes that the statue of Winston Churchill may well have to be put into a museum, and that while he was a complex man, he is considered a hero by millions. Quoted as saying, "It was extraordinarily sad that my grandfather, who was such an unifying figure in this country, appears to have become a sort of icon through being controversial. We've come to this place where history is viewed only entirely through the prism of the present, and that he often held views which particularly now are regarded as unacceptable, but weren't necessarily then, and that while it would be infuriating to put him in a museum, it would be safer," adding that Parliament Square would be a poorer place without him. Sir Nicholas Soames said, "I find it extraordinary that millions and millions of people all over the world who look up to Britain will be astonished that a statue of Churchill and the Cenotaph, our national war memorial, could have been defaced in this disgusting way." There was also an author mentioned called Shrabani Basu, who wrote books about the British Empire, saying that while there were two sides of Churchill, and that we do need to know about his darkest hour as well as his finest, his statue should remain regardless, because then you could be taught the whole story about who he really was. So perhaps now would be a good idea to bring up why it is he's considered so divided. We could start with the fact that he is not a supporter of democracy. He does support using poison gas on tribes, the Bengal famine, which is where Allied forces stopped the food flow to India due to Japan occupying Burma, not apologising when some wants him to, for what happened to Native Americans and Aboriginals, and of course his comments when it comes to race. Continuing on from that, over the weekend there were some protests. There was some BLM marching, but not as much, because of the curfews. But then there were those who wanted to protect the statues from being defaced that have been dubbed far-right thugs. There were some fights, yes, but the media portrayal of this is quite sad, really. When the BLM marches happened last weekend, over 30 police officers were harmed. 6 were harmed this time, but of course the far-right racists are the ones we need to call out. Okay, I can't be the only person that saw the hypocrisy. There were fights, there were scuffles. The police did get involved, of course. One supporter of BLM did in fact carry one who has been dubbed a far-right protester to safety after he was beaten up at Waterloo Station. Good on that person for standing up to those who were trying to beat someone else up, vastly outnumbering them and getting them to safety. Sadiq Khan has condemned the far-right for their involvement this weekend, because Britain First were there, therefore it's a far-right march. It's not a bunch of people who are very proud of what they have in their country, and they don't want to see it ruined by a bunch of morons. Then again, Sadiq Khan is entirely to blame for this. The moment he boarded up Churchill, the moment he boarded up the Cenotaph, he set events in motion that led to this. He encouraged it. I assume this was a long-term play, Sadiq, although I don't think you're bright enough for this. A mass deflection over the absolute destruction wrought by BLM in London in favour of a very small group of people who are considered far-right nationalist thugs. I take it back, you're not bright enough for this. Evgeny Lebedev put out an article through the Daily Mail on Sunday where he feared the pictures of Stalin that were doctored to remove people could become a trend when it comes to London with regards to boarding up Churchill and the Cenotaph, because it now increases calls for possible removal of those monuments, something which there is in fact a petition to make it legal that the government cannot remove them, which, I'll be honest, I can fully understand, because it does depend on the people involved, and of course you don't want to tell the nasty side of all history. Find one statue where someone was actually a saint, and I'm sure there's one historian somewhere, or a Wikipedia historian, who could point you in the direction of something they did that was actually negative. But to add to the fact that people want Winston Churchill's statue removed, we now go to David Lammy, who is the Shadow Minister for the Labour Party. He has actually criticised the 31 MPs who accused the Home Secretary Priti Patel of gaslighting. This all came about because of the clash with black and ethnic minority MPs last week in the House of Commons, with him saying he's not into a facile debate about who's experienced more racism. Finally, he says something I can agree with. He also does not support the removal of the Winston Churchill statue. While he does agree that Priti Patel's response was insensitive, he believes that this whole debate is pointless. However, as a counter to that, Lammy's solution is equal representation, pointing out that there are 1% of police officers that are black, 1% of judges that are black, 51% of those in our young offenders institutions are from black, Asian or minority ethnic backgrounds. We could talk certainly about crime if you wish and how best to tackle it, but the police officers and the judges part, I'm not sure how we represent that properly. Does it have to be done based on a census? Well, we do one next year, and if you like, then we can just get rid of the judges who don't fill the quota and replace them with people of a certain race because representation to match the percentage in the country, something which I think is reckless. It should always be the most experienced and best suited person for the job. If they are of another race, or if you want to make race an issue in the criminal justice system, and starting from there, oh boy, you are setting yourself up for failure. But I do agree with you on Priti Patel and the debates within Parliament being facile. I have a sneaky feeling debates with regards to the statue are going to go on for quite some time. And my hope is that because many cities have already started kowtowing to the majority who have said, don't you dare tear down our statues, I don't believe Winston Churchill will go anywhere, and they're not going to move the Cenotaph. I don't think anyone actually has the balls to touch the Cenotaph, let alone move it. But if someone did try and move Churchill, I think more would side with those, air quotes, racist thugs who want to protect it from those who just want to spray paint all over it and possibly yank it into the Thames. And I'm fully aware that that comes across as the more extreme option, but since they did it with Edward Colston, I feel like it is right to point out it is a distinct possibility with Winston Churchill. With all of this, I'd love to know what you think, so please do let me know in the comments down below.